going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week, first of all, well, no, I guess we'll do what we're supposed to do. This week, we are here for the Innistrad Crimson Vow side story number 1, the first of 5, The Edge of the World by Aisha U. Farah. So, my quick review at the top of this one is that I actually really liked this story.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it was great. As side stories tend to go, it's a perfectly self-contained world, but I really appreciated, well, we'll go into it more, but I appreciated the detail that they went into for Innistrad as a whole, like that they talked about a lot of its past and etc., which makes it even better, I think, as a side story. Or as its own story, because it teaches you a lot of things in addition to just being a pretty compelling story.
Yeah. I have to agree. I liked the story a lot. Yeah, and I would say it's a good one to read, too. Even if you're not reading the other stories, because like you said, it's kind of standalone.
Yeah.
But it tells you some things about Innistrad. I'm not even sure whether that's a good thing or not. But it tells you some things about Innistrad that you should probably know if that is in fact gonna be canon.
Sure.
I guess.
Sure.
Is how you would say it?
Yeah. So that is our quick review. If that is something that inspires you to want to go read the story, but you have not yet done so, the top link in the description down below will take you right to it. You can go ahead and check it out for yourself. We want to try to, as always, remove as many barriers as possible from you being able to read the story. And then, of course, we would love it if you would come back here and join us in our review so that we can hear your opinions, as always, down in the comments below, and whether they compare, contrast, whatever, with ours. So, before we get into the full review itself, first things first, for all of you who are in the United States who celebrate, Happy Thanksgiving. This is coming out on Thanksgiving 2021, so Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. We, I know, are, being as safe as possible, and doing so, spending it with a small group of family. It'll be like 4 of us. So we hope that you were all able to have a safe and happy and healthy Thanksgiving, as we hope that every day of your lives always are. But yes, so happy Thanksgiving to you and yours for all those who celebrate. And if you don't, hope your Thursday is going well, and that you're enjoying the episode. And then, just a reminder, hi, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Geek for All. We would love it if you would subscribe and ring that bell so that you will get notifications, thank you, whenever any of our videos come out and whenever we go live, which is typically every Monday and Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern right here on this channel. That will be this Friday included, the day after this video comes out. We will be back with more X-Men Legends, but just a slight change for December 2021. We will be streaming every Thursday instead of Friday, still 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, just because with the holidays and PAX Unplugged, which is going on during that month, all of those things kind of would impact our streams. And so instead of canceling a bunch of streams in December, we just decided we would just push it back a day. And so it will be every Thursday instead of every Friday. But feel free to check out any of our other channels, linked down below. As always, subscribing, ringing the bell, super helpful. We really appreciate it. But on to the full review itself. I wrote here that I really liked, and we briefly touched on it, but we heard about the aftermath of the travails a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like more so than any of the other stories from Midnight Hunt even did. They touched on it, don't get me wrong, right? Because we've talked about it before. But I feel like this went into so much more detail with it, I guess because it was so much more relevant for this particular story about how it affected the Geists and the world and like Jacob's outlook on the world, which I guess eventually leads to how the story ends as well. But it just was very interesting to me that we got all of that information from just this side story, right? Because to my knowledge, we have not gotten Planeswalkers guides for this set or Innistrad Midnight Hunt. right? We had gotten them in the past, which I complained about them, right? Because it was the kind of thing where it was not talked about in the story section, and it was released like in the same week as 2 stories.
Right.
So it's like you should read the Planeswalker's Guide first so that you understand what the hell is going on before you read the stories, because at least with Kaldheim, right? That was the big one for us.
They released it like after 1 or 2 of the other stories.
Correct. Yeah, it was after some of the other... Thank you. Yes, it was after some of the other stories had come out. And then by the time we read the Planeswalker's Guide, like, it made so many things that we had so many questions about prior make so much more sense.
Right.
Specifically for Kaldheim is what I'm thinking of, but in general. So
Which
maybe...
I suppose if you're just a reader, then that's fine, I guess. But if you're doing videos where you're complaining about the lack of information, and then you read the thing that comes out later, and that provides you with that information, it's just stupid.
Yeah, it was released, like, out of order, it seemed to us, and it wasn't talked about on the story page. So if you go to the story page, they don't direct you to the Planeswalker's Guide in any capacity, despite the fact that the Planeswalker's Guide tells you about the lore of the plane and the story and gives you more context for the stories.
Right.
It just would have made sense to me.
It gives you a jumping off point.
Right.
So that you understand just like the baseline information of where you are and what that place is about, before they start just going right into, well, these particular characters who live in this particular place are doing these particular things.
Right. Yeah, and so it helped, and like I said, or like I was alluding to, maybe because we're returning to Innistrad, and so it's not Kaldheim or Strixhaven, which we've never been to before, maybe that's why there wasn't a Planeswalker's Guide, but, you know, because of that, there's a lot of information about the travails that we don't fully know how it has impacted the plane. We got little droplets and snippets throughout all these stories, but otherwise, where the hell else are we going to find this information out? So this story did a really good job. It just seemed odd to me that it was side story number 1 of the second set of stories in a row for us being on the plane. I appreciate that it's here. It just seemed like an odd place for it, you know?
Right.
But I wrote a quote down for myself this time. Usually it's like, Amy's like, write that down. But this time I was like, I'm going to write a quote down. So one of the quotes that was written is, "The world has been picked up and shaken, and all of its pieces are jostled out of their proper places." I just really liked that visual of what the travails did to Innistrad, because we've been seeing that all across these stories, right? The humans are desperately trying to put it back together with the coven and the witches and the I'm not going to remember the name of the festival that they were having, but the festival,
The Fall Fest.
the Dawnheart Fest? No, the Dawnheart Coven. But anyway, yeah, the fall festival that they were having that got broken up by all the werewolves. But like all of that is trying to or is trying to be done because Innistrad's really out of whack, and like yes, Eternal Night has come and is being prevented from being fixed thanks to Olivia, but it's happening because of the travails and the fact that the magic on the plane is like so messed up right now. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciated that a lot. Something that you and I didn't appreciate as much, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, so hopefully we can talk about it a bit, but Nellic. Lord Nellic, who we meet at the beginning, and we find out more about him at the end, but Lord Nellic, who we meet at the beginning, like openly acknowledges that the fact that he is so rich and the fact that he makes money, whenever he makes money, it means that someone else has to lose money. And he just acknowledges that.
Well, I liked that he just said, I'm a businessman.
Yes.
So inevitably that means
correct
that if I make money, someone else is losing money.
Right.
I, as a business major, loved that because I was like, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Well, it's right, and it's we'll talk about this in a second. So then that combined with the market stalls, right? They're walking through this cold, dark, eternal night city, and there are market stalls that are still open, and the people that are like operating the stalls are like huddled inside and they're freezing, and it says, you know, they're staying open because, you know, the rents haven't been lowered,
right?
And the food still has to be paid for, and medical bills still have to be paid for, and it's like, wow. you know, I don't want to be a hypocrite, right? I try to not be hypocritical at all. So I usually appreciate when a story alludes to the real world and situations that are going on in the real world.
Right.
Just broad concepts like racism or persecution against LGBT folks or things like that, right? That type of thing I appreciate. I appreciate...
Or like general politics stuff.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Just, right. This, I felt like there was no illusion at all.
Yeah, it was super specific, and in a way that doesn't make it feel like we're talking about Magic the Gathering here. Just in a way that makes it feel like the author was complaining about their life.
Well, and it's a balance, right? It's an interesting balance that has to be stricken, I guess,
okay.
Or struck. I truly don't. Based on that sentence, I don't know which word is proper, and I apologize. But because there's a place for touching on those topics and alluding to those topics. Like I said, I like it typically when that occurs. But I'm also aware that reading these stories should be an escape. Mm-hmm. And like, all you did was just blatantly be like, by the way, money sucks. Like, financial situations are terrible.
Bills.
I would love other people's thoughts too, as always. But it was like, to me, it felt so heavy-handed. It was just like, it might as well have been an aside of like, by the way, I don't like this thing, right? And I don't disagree with any of the statements that are being made here, right? But I guess even if I did, like whether I do or don't is irrelevant. It was just something that it so heavily stood out to me, and it was just like, it was awkward. It was awkward to read it and have it be like, wow, why are we talking about this right now?
Yeah, it ruined the immersion.
Yeah. Yeah, it like took me out of the story a fair bit, and you and I ended up stopping and talking about it for a little while because it was again so heavy-handed. When Nellick makes that comment earlier, that was fine, I think. I mean, it made us think about it, but we then moved on. But then when the market stall thing came up later, it reminded me back to the Nellick thing, and it was so heavy-handed of like, well, food bills and medical bills, and it's like, wow.
It's like, no, this is magic. Like, people just are healers, like, and there are healing potions and stuff. Like, you don't have medical bills. You don't have to go, like, to an MRI and then submit it to your insurance and then, pay it off in installments. Like,
yeah, I just didn't,
like,
I don't know.
It's not, no.
Yeah, I think personally, and again, I really want to know other people's thoughts on this, but I would have appreciated a little bit more subtlety in the approach of trying to make that comparison. I don't know how, right? I'm not here to try. I'm not here to say, well, I'm a better author and this is how I would write it. No, it felt so heavy-handed, and it really did like remove from the overall appreciation of that portion of the story, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it isn't even that it's heavy-handed. I feel that it lacks authenticity.
Okay.
With the story.
Fair enough.
And the place and time.
So, like I said, I would love people's thoughts on that. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why? Especially if you disagree with us. Why? I would love to know, because like it felt that way to me. But if there are people who are like, no, money woes have always been an issue on Innistrad or something like that, where like, it's something that maybe we're not remembering correctly or we're not aware of. I would love to know any and all of those things, really.
Well, and the thing is, there are other ways to say in a more, I would say, historically accurate manner that there were money problems.
Okay.
Like, oh, one of my sheep was stolen,
sure,
and now I can't pay for the bread that I was going to get for the month.
Right, or my horse was attacked in the night, so how am I to travel to sell my wares?
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
I
can't afford to pay my rent and my medical bills. It's just absurd.
It seemed a little, like I said, it seemed a little heavy-handed. We can move away from it. I do want people's opinions on it though. Then I thought a nice allegory to the real world, very slight, but I appreciated it. And whether this was intentional or not, there's a quote here regarding Jacob adding sugar to his tea. It said, quote, "They brew it too bitter in the South." So the South referring to Selhoff, but for those of us who live in the United States, we're aware that tea in the South of the United States is typically known as sweet tea. And so it's not brewed too bitter in the South. That's kind of the point, is that's a thing in the South, is you get yourself some sweet tea. So I thought that was funny. I read that, it made me chuckle a little bit.
Either that or sweet tea is called sweet tea because the alternative is completely unsweetened tea, which is also as common.
Sure. And again, I know we have some. I know we have some. Well, I was going to say, I know we have some Southern viewers, and I know that we are, hoity-toity New Yorkers. So,
yeah.
So feel free to educate us.
They always come here for our hoity-toity nature,
for our highbrow levels of humor. Mm-hmm. Come watch us on stream. Not even a plug, just come watch us on stream. You will see that there is very little highbrow humor, and that's how we like it. That's just how that works.
Our brows are low.
Moving on to the rest of the story, it was a little odd, the whole possession situation, and I get that he's an investigator, so he's trying to figure it out as well, right? So there's a bit of a mystery, but it was I really thought that the Geist attacks from Millicent, right? We find out later, were what ended up possessing Eloise, and that's why she was acting so strangely and then attempting to possess him being Jacob. But then to come find out later that it wasn't that or whatever, that's fine. It just, so I liked that there was the swerve in there. I'm not sure, it might require a second read. I'm not sure if it was the kind of mystery that could have been ascertained through reading this beforehand, or the little wink to the people that know about it, right? So when you watch a movie a second time and you know the twist, now you can see all the things that you're like, oh crap, there it is. There's that hint right there, right? That when you're watching it through the first time, there's no goddamn way you would have known that thing was alluding to the twist at the end or who the real killer was or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, if you're not a true fan, you don't see the Easter eggs, I guess is.
But the fact that that I didn't feel because sometimes that happens too, when something is revealed at the end, you flash back to the other part and you're like, oh shit, that's why this happened, mm-hmm. right? So it reminds you enough because something occurred earlier and you were like, what's the significance of this? I don't get it. And then the twist occurs and you're like, I get it now. Got it. Thank you. So I didn't notice that here. Like I said, maybe it requires a second read through so I can be like, ooh, there it is, you sneaky bastards. But until then, it was not something that I was able to pick up in my first read through to point back, which again either means that it requires a second read through or that it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, I guess that's fine. I prefer it the other way, but again, I'm trying not to sit here and be like, it should have been written this way, because that's rude and not okay. So I liked that the Vizag Atom was a thing that we learned about in this story. The Geist Talkers. That Jacob was this guy. I mean, I played against that Jacob card at pre-release. It's a mythic. It's an 0-2 for 2 or 3 or something like that. And it does some pretty interesting things, right? He's an investigator, so it exiles cards and then you can play them later. And I looked this up because I was curious, and I'm unfortunately not as much up on my Dracula / Van Helsing lore. I'm just not. I've seen the movies, but it was a long time ago, and I did not watch the anime, if that has anything to do with it. And we have not, as of yet, on Video Games for All, played any of the Castlevania series, which heavily focuses on Dracula as well. So I have no idea. But I do know that the Harker family, which is heavily focused on in the Dracula alt art cards, right? Mina Harker is the one that you really liked that Magali painted with the dress and everything.
Yeah.
Jacob Hauken from these stories, his Dracula version is Jonathan Harker. So either spouse to or sibling of Mina, I assume, or ancestor or descendant or whatever. Because if I recall correctly, again, vague knowledge, and you're more than welcome to educate me if you do know.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But the Harker family lineage is typically always going after Dracula and trying to like stop him and his brood and etc. So Jonathan Harker is Jacob Hauken, and when I read his name on the card, like Jacob Hauken, I'm like, that sounds like something, right? It sounds like a name that I know, and I don't think it was Jonathan Harker, Harker, but still, it was something. It sounded familiar enough to me that I wanted to look it up, so I did. It's Jonathan Harker, but I like that they talked about the Geist Talkers, that they showed that Jacob was so powerful that like he couldn't be possessed.
Yeah. And
he had the ability to, talk to the Geists, command them away, etc. With like some hand motions, and I know you were seemed like you were a little nervous. I assume from watching Full Metal Alchemist, but you seemed a little nervous when he was using his blood to like make that seal that he gave to Millicent at that one part in the story.
I was nervous too with like all of the aspects of the like being possessed stuff.
Sure.
Because of the way it was written, where it's written from his point of view. And they did a great job, but it took a long time to get to a point where he actually told the audience, "Oh, I can deal with this."
Yes, that's
like
yeah.
I know the feeling, and I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I can control this guy as opposed to having him control me.
Yeah.
And it took so long to get there that it was like, every time something like that was starting to happen, I was like, oh no, what's going to happen now? So it was like very nail-bitey until the point where they finally were like, oh, well, this is no big deal for him. And it's like, oh, you couldn't fucking tell us that like half a story ago?
No, they wanted it to be a thriller. But it reminds me of those moments in movies, right? Horror movies where you're like, oh god, it's right behind you. Like, figure it out. She's possessed. Get it. Figure it out. And like we're sitting there knowing that the whole time. Meanwhile, he eventually gets there. But that's cool. Like a lot of these short stories, I feel like, or side stories, I should say, I feel like have been allegories to or similar to horror movies, right? We've talked about that in some past stories. Right. So that even just that trope of like, we know it, right, but it doesn't seem like he knows it yet, and he really needs to figure it out quickly, please.
Right. Or like comic book character-y, like
sure.
You talked about Van Helsing before.
Yeah.
Like Constantine comes to mind.
Sure.
Like, I just like picture Keanu Reeves with a cat in his arms, like getting into the tub.
Sure.
You probably don't know because that's a really old and stupid reference, but
no, it was fine. And then let's talk about the ending, shall we? Sorry. Let's talk about the ending. I wrote my notes here, and so I think I'll just read my notes, because I just wrote this. Like, there's like, look at how much I wrote on the ending. It starts here. So, I wrote, very strange way to end it. Just such a weird way to end this story. Mm-hmm. Jacob's gone, so is Rav. Since he can't possess Jacob, he has to have been in someone else's body, because he doesn't go in Nelik's body. But he said to Jacob when he was Nelik, well, if you don't like this body, I'll just grab another one. Like, is that like a weird sex thing? Like, I don't get it. I don't want to get it. Are they working together? Like, Rav suggests? Did Jacob just agree and they're working together now? Is Jacob just playing with Rav to try and stop him at some later point? Because Jacob is tired now, but it seemed to me, and we were kind of talking about this, it seemed to me that at one point Jacob was doing the like James Bond thing where you like let the villain monologue to like find out more information about their plan so that you have more of an opportunity to stop them. Because like if you don't know what they're trying to do, like you can just kill them, I guess. But like past that, what are you going to do? So like if Jacob can't kill the Geist, he can only like, you know, push him out of one body, but then he's just going to go to somebody else. Like you get him talking so that he reveals his plan, his reason for why he's doing all these things. Then I said, are Eloise and Millicent relevant at all? Like they show up at the end, but just to tell us that like the place is empty. But does that mean that this story has to continue? Because Amy, you brought that up.
Yeah, when you said that was the end of the story, I was like, oh, okay, so it's a to be continued.
Right.
And you were like, it is, but it's not.
Yeah, so I was like, is the continuation of this story going to be another side story for this set? Because if it's not, are we able to even have confidence anymore that it will be the same story team that will want to even continue that side story? That we will even have side stories still? Because that's not always how it was. It wasn't always main then side. So is that what, like we're just guaranteed that that's going to happen from now on? Because we'd have to, if it's not in this set, right? If it's not like next week or over the next 4 stories or something, that just means that the next time we come back to Innistrad, we have to care enough about Eloise and Jacob and Millicent
Right.
and Rav, Cyril Rav. And if we don't, who cares? Like, I want to know what happens, but not 4 years from now, the next time we come back to Innistrad. I doubt I'll still care.
Fair.
And if they don't say, like, well, the last time we heard from these people was Innistrad Crimson Vow side story number 1, so you should go check it out for yourself. Like, am I going to remember enough? It's just, so like, that frustrated me a lot. Because, like, at this point, you know, are we being cynical? Maybe. But can we say that you're going to have the same story team 4 years from now, 5 years from now?
Right.
To know that whatever vision they have for how the story is going to continue, if they have one at all. So I hope that it's over the next couple of weeks, and if not, I just don't know. I don't know if I am going to be able to care enough.
Right.
I don't know if it's worth it, especially if it's not. More importantly, especially if it's not the same authors. If it's the same story team and the same authors, hell yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. However many years from now, as long as I'm still, you know, caring about them in general. Because I'd love to hear the rest of the story. But if it's a different author, like, is it going to be the same trajectory, the same kind of story? Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's just so far away. So, with that speculation, hopefully it's next side story or whatever, which will be in 2 weeks because we do this main then side, then main then side. So next week will be main story number 2. So stay tuned for that. But I don't know. That was all of what I wrote with regard to the ending for that, because it's like it just, is it supposed to be next week? Because if not, I just don't have confidence or patience in, well, just wait till the next time we're on Innistrad. And it's like, yeah, when you're 4 more story teams deep and no one cares anymore. Like,
or maybe we're just not supposed to find out the answer.
Right.
Sometimes stories are like that.
Sure,
where
but
they
then
just decide that it's up to the interpretation of the audience.
I guess it just seemed odd to me then that it would end with Millicent and Eloise Wicker showing up. And like that's how we find out that the guys are missing, and that they're now going to go off together and solve crime, or they're the ones who are going to try to stop now Jacob and Rav. Who knows? I just at this point, unless it's next week or within the next couple of side stories, I kind of don't care.
Yeah,
like
same.
I do, but I also don't. I'm just very tired of it, like Jacob says, right? So we shall see. But I do want to.
I'm tired too.
But I do want to know people's opinions, right? If it's not over the next couple of side stories, do you care? Like, are you really invested in coming back to hearing about Jacob and Cyril Rav and Detective Eloise Wicker and Millicent? Or are you like me and you're like, well, I guess I'm over it. Thanks.
Not really done? Well, done.
Yeah. I'm done, though. Yeah. So let us know those things in the comments down below. But otherwise, I think that's going to be the end of this particular episode of JaAR. I really hope everybody enjoyed. Like I said, I hope that for those who celebrate, you had a very happy Thanksgiving. If you were able to spend it safely with folks, whether it be a family Thanksgiving or a Friendsgiving, as we discussed in some of our streams over the weeks leading up or the days leading up to Thanksgiving, then hopefully you enjoyed it. We would love to hear any and all updates from all of you during our streams or in the comments of any of our videos whatsoever. Definitely check those out. Don't forget our other channels as well, linked down below. And hey, liking, sharing, etc., always super helpful, and we really do appreciate it. So
ring that bell.
That's right. But hopefully you were able to enjoy this episode whenever you got a chance to do so. And thank you for doing so. But that is going to be the end of this particular episode. If you were able to sit and read this story and hopefully care about these characters enough to want to know what happens in the future, whether it is in the coming weeks or years down the line, it's still a great way, continuing the conversation with us and your fellow viewers, to show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
That's right. Like I said, please continue to do so. We really do appreciate it. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.